welcome all of you tonight to our second in our Riverside chat series. Really glad you could join us and enjoy this evening hearing more about our staff. I hope, first of all, that all of you are staying safe and healthy in these very unusual and turbulent times we're in. So if you're on this chat with us tonight, obviously you care about FOR. So tonight you're going to get a chance to learn more about all these wonderful people that help make FOR able to do its work. Without them, we just can't do what our mission is to do. So hopefully by the time the evening is over, you will learn a little bit more about each of them. We're going to start with a round of introductions from each of them, and then have a short break, and then followed by a second round where you'll learn even more in depth about them. Before we get started, I do want to tell everybody that we are going to have a Q&A section at the end of this. So each device is different. When you're on Zoom, you got to find the place where you'll see Q&A, you touch that, and then you can type in a question and they'll show up so that I'll see them as they come in. And we'll have a little Q&A section after the 2 rounds of all the staff members telling you about their work and the things they like about FOR. So without further ado, we're going to start this off with an introduction by Kelly Dawson. Take it away, Kelly.
Thank you, Bob. Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm the Program and Development Associate with Friends of the River. What that means is I do admin work to support all of these wonderful people you're going to meet who help do the great work that Friends of the River does. My favorite moment at Friends of the River was about 6 weeks after I started. Toby and Brittany had worked really hard to put on a wild and scenic film festival, and I brought my whole family and volunteered. And my stepdaughter Amelie and I were taking tickets, and I got to meet members, people who were just off the river, and people of all ages who were coming together to watch movies that would inspire and motivate them to care about the environment. It was such a welcoming experience for both me and my family to Friends of the River, but I got to see firsthand the impact that Friends of the River makes. So next we're going to hear from Toby.
Hi all, my name is Toby Briggs. I'm the engagement director at Friends of the River. My role is to engage especially volunteers in the advocacy work we do. You've probably received emails from me about the River Advocacy Training School or the RATS program. In the last year, I've passed some of my on-river programming with rafting and canoeing to Colton Johnson, who you'll meet next, and have the chance to facilitate the One Water Network, and I'm excited to tell you more about the storytelling project when I tell you more about what I do. One of my favorite moments at Friends of the River was during Paddle to the Capitol, which was a multi-day paddle from the Chili Bar Run all the way until the American River reaches the confluence of the Sacramento River. And one of the days, it was on the Chili Bar, it was on, the Gorge Run. And one of the things that we had for Paddle to the Capitol were river ferries. And river ferries are people who come and bring fun and treats and silliness to the river. And each day we would encounter the river ferries once or twice. And sometimes they would have paste on mustaches, and other times they'd have face paint or glitter. Sometimes they would bring you treats like brownies or watermelon. But one day I convinced a couple of my friends to come along, and they wore tutus. You'll actually get to see our executive director here in the photos that you'll see later wearing one. But they wore tutus with me. They went down in a boat, and they helped me pass out popsicles on a very hot day. And it was just ridiculous fun to do something silly and support this event and get to watch it come on by. So with that river moment, I want to pass it over to Colton.
Hi, my name is Colton Johnson. I'm the On River Program Coordinator for Friends of the River. Like Toby said, I handle coordinating our river programs, be they canoeing or rafting. I also do some wild and scenic work for Friends of the River, and I'm excited to tell you more about the work I'm doing a little bit later. My favorite moment at Friends of the River has to be our Point Positive Day that we held in 2019. And we visited a bunch of legislators and representatives and went and said, hello to them and urge them to be stronger supporters and advocates for a point positive future for California's water. And I think it was really powerful for me to leave the Capitol basement with so many volunteers and like-minded individuals and go and talk to our representatives and let them know that there are people out there who do care about rivers, and so should they. With that, passing it on to Ron Stork.
Hi, I'm Ron Stork. I've been working at Friends of the River for nearly 33 years on the conservation staff. I've worked to designate wild and scenic rivers, to develop wild and scenic river management plans, stop dams, Central Valley flood management, floodplain management, worked against the Corps of Engineers' war on nature, water rights, dam licensing, San Joaquin Valley drainage, and all things American River, and more. So I've had a full life here at Friends of the River, doing good work, I hope. One of my favorite moments, and they're only one of them, was a peaceful stroll across the lawn of the United States Capitol after we had managed to get the Congress to do the second designation of the Merced Wild and Scenic River. That summer, I'd spent most of the summer and some of the spring deployed to our nation's capital, and we had passed the Central Valley Project Improvement Act and defeated in an epic battle the Auburn Dam that year. And so as I strolled across that lawn, a feeling of peace and also recognition that we do really important work. And I now pass the hat to Eric Wesselman.
Hey everybody, my name is Eric Wesselman. I'm the executive director at Friends of the River, so I get to do a little bit of everything, I suppose. And I've served in this role for 6 years now, and some. And I think my favorite, happiest day at Friends of the River occurred on the river, on the South Fork of the American River in particular, on a river trip last summer. We were in between rapids, and we were just floating along, and I was just enjoying the beauty of the canyon there and my company. And it just dawned on me, I came to fully realize that the organization had really turned a corner by that point and was now poised for growth. And it was just really remarkable for me, and it had been happening gradually for some time. But I felt we've really come into our own. And as some of you may know, we came through a rough patch through the Great Recession and been rebuilding and reorienting and reorganizing to get to that point. And it was really then on that beautiful day on the river that I came to just really kind of fully realize and take in and own the fact that we made it. And we were now ready to expand the organization and take on new important work. And it's just so critical. And getting that, why it meant so much to me is just that it made me so happy is because there's no shortage of work to do, right, to protect and restore California's rivers. There's a lot of work to be done, and we're going to need all of us to come together to do it, and that takes time, resources, creativity, and a lot of hard work. So that's my happiest day at Friends of the River so far. I'm going to turn it over to Brittany.
Hi, I'm Brittany McMahon. I'm the development director, and that means that I'm responsible for raising support for our work and bringing people together through various communications and events. One of my favorite moments working for Friends of the River was during the River Advocacy Training School a couple years ago. We had some speakers come to a campfire talk, and one of them was Martha Davis. She was the former Assistant General Manager of the Inland Empire Utility Agency, and before that, the Executive Director of the Mono Lake Committee. She spoke about the difficulties managing water for a utility agency during the drought, but what struck me was her really pragmatic approach to solving a problem in a way that promoted long-term conservation. She discussed some of the solutions, which seemed really simple, but had a really lasting effect on the district's ability to save water. And also make sure they had enough funding. And this was at a time in California when utility agencies were losing money during the drought, and theirs was actually making money while conserving at the same time. So for me, it was really inspiring to see that if you have truly committed people, to people that are committed to solving the problem, it really is possible to make lasting change. And it also really shored up my faith in the work that we do every day, with the belief that we can make a difference in how Californians use water and allow more of it to stay in rivers. So thank you. With that, I will turn it back over to Bob.
Thank you, everybody, for those first introductions. We're going to have another short slideshow so that you can see some photos of people in action on our staff doing the work that they do. Just a short slideshow, and then we'll come back for the second round of learning more about everybody's work. Okay. Not sure what happened. Hold on. Why am I not seeing myself? I'm seeing something else. That's embarrassing. I don't even know what that is.
Is that your iPad video on?
Yeah. I have
Perhaps your screen has turned around.
No, haven't moved it. Hold on one second. Oh, okay. Well, we had hoped to do this without glitches, but that was too much ask. Sorry about that. Fortunately, my wife knocked on the door and told me what was going on. Okay. So now we're going to go do round two. Sorry about that. As you can see, it's kind of like watching late night show hosts now, because everybody's working from home, and so you're getting a glimpse of seeing what's inside people's homes, and you're seeing glitches like even Stephen Colbert is making on his show. So now we're going to go to round two, and you're going to hear a little bit more in depth from some of these people, and we're going to start off again with Kelly.
Hello again. So as I said, I'm the Program and Development Associate. That means I work behind the scenes to help support the great work that Friends of the River does. So part of that is processing donations. And in this time, I am just been heartened and amazed that people are still giving to us. New people are giving to us. People are giving more than ever. And it's just wonderful to know that we're important to them during these times. And in part of processing donations, members send in little notes, and I'd like to share two of them with you now. To Friends of the River, I have just finished reading your Headwaters issue. I find the articles both encouraging and frightening. I admire your good work and dedication. Another letter I received recently was, for all your efforts saving wild and scenic rivers. Thanks for the virtual rafting session. Great for an old timer. Cheers. Receiving notes like that just really brighten my day. Another part of what I do behind the scenes is I put together the River Advocate, which is our monthly online newsletter, which I hope you're all subscribed to. And what I do basically is I corral staff and to ensure that we get this out monthly, because we have important updates that we need our members to see, such as action alerts, how you can volunteer and when there are volunteer events. Also any event information, which unfortunately this year might just be all virtual. And then of course, the most important part of it, maybe, Mr. Stork's currents, which keeps us all up to date on policy issues and is always very informative. In this time of COVID, Friends of the River is not just surviving, they are thriving. And part of my job has been helping us all to row the boat in the same direction at the same time. And that has been figuring out technology, new technology, and how to use it, helping us all to stay connected while we work remotely, and helping to move our office environment and culture to the virtual realm. One of the ways I've done that is to ensure that we stay connected through twice weekly staff calls. And that way we can all share our resources and ask for any assistance we might need during these trying times. And dealing with this new technology and figuring out different platforms, it has been frustrating but rewarding. And it really helps me because I enjoy to be able to continue making a connection with this great group of hardworking people. Now, as you've noticed, possibly with Toby, sometimes we have some new coworkers, as I do. This is my little dog, Reggie, and he often gets to work before me and stays after me. He has his own little chair next to me here. And just for levity, sometimes we get Toby's cat showing up, but one time Reggie really needed to take a break, and we were in a staff call. So I had to text my husband to come get him, and I really hope everybody enjoyed the view of me passing this little dog off to my husband. So that's just a little what I do to support the vital work that Friends of the River does. And I want to help support these great people that you're going to meet.
Kelly, let me ask you a question. What do you look forward to the most when you visualize the end of this work from home era?
Okay, I don't think I should say this out loud, but my husband's a teacher and we have 2 kids, so getting out of the house, no, I'm joking. I'm really, really looking forward to going back into the office because it's so much more supportive to be able to, be able to ask a question in person and be able to really have that kind of one-on-one. So it makes my job a lot easier to be able to support people when I can actually see them. So I'm really looking forward to going back into the office and working in person with these wonderful people.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to Toby next.
Hey, folks. So I am excited. When I started at Friends of the River, I was working on a story today for the storytelling project that I'll share with you here in just a little bit. And I was remembering all the way back to when I just was first introduced to Friends of the River. And the work that I do at Friends of the River has changed over the years. And that's one of the fun parts about working here, is that what I started doing and what I do now are different things. So what I want to share with you 2 things that I'm doing right now. One is I was working with rats. We just recently finished our cohort. And the other is the storytelling project that I just briefly mentioned. And I'd love to talk to you about how to get involved and what's available for you, whether you're writing a story or listening to them. So imagine if you know what Camp Lotus is like, you might really appreciate how lovely it is in January when nobody's there and it's quiet. It's one of the ways that Camp Lotus supports Friends of the River is we get to rent out all of Camp Lotus in January. And we invite our rats, our river advocates, to a 4-day intensive river advocacy training school training. And these are folks who applied back in November to say, hey, I want to dedicate dedicate anywhere between 5 and 10 hours a week to volunteering. And so we offer this deep dive in there, and there's great food made by other volunteers, amazing speakers. We take them on field trips, and we build that camaraderie that we all know comes from spending days together. So each RATS cohort is always working on a tactic for a bigger campaign. And so this year, they were working on a tactic for the Point Positive campaign. And just, Eric's going to talk more about that, but the Point Positive campaign is a sustainable water approaches, alternative approaches to dams and diversions. So I'll leave that to Eric to say more about that. But what our RATs were working on was really interesting. They were reaching out to businesses to invite them to write a letter to Governor Newsom. And the message was that a strong economy cannot thrive in the age of climate change if we don't invest in thriving ecosystems. So it was a really awesome project to get use our power as volunteers to reach out and have a broader reach. And with that, those businesses that got recruited who said, yes, I believe that strong economies and ecosystems, we need both of those. We're being invited to our Point Positive May 13th, which is our day of action and advocacy. You might also know it by California Rivers Day. Unfortunately, as you know, COVID, we didn't have the event. And so like all good advocates and in the process of advocacy, we switch gears to make sure that we are staying on top of things. And I'm really proud of this group. They adapted, and their 2 projects shifted to reaching out to over 450 FOR members to just check in and see how things were going for them, and also to share about this new project that we had. So since May 15th, we've started the Storytelling Project. And that project was mentioned actually back in that quiet January days when we were at training. And the idea caught my attention because I love the Moth Radio Hour. It's a podcast that collects the best of the stories and shares them out. And so I have a deep love of storytelling. And so in March, we started the Storytelling Project here at Friends of the River that brings together stories from all you all of our 50 years of history. And because our organization started with river guides, it's no surprise that we're a community of storytellers. And so I just want to invite each of you to take a moment and think about what is a small piece of your story with Friends of the River that you can succinctly bring together, that has a beginning, middle, and end, that has a POW that starts it and a thoughtful conclusion. It's been a real treat to work with folks on different stories that they've created. I encourage you to go to our website and look under the Storytelling Project, which is right above the RATS tab, and to check out the Read Stories piece. I am especially excited that there's two groups of stories to look at. One is all of them, but our RATS cohort that just finished, they just wrote individual stories and they're diverse and interesting. And then we also had our first story from the storytelling workshop go up just yesterday, who was also actually a RAT too, but from our very first cohort. So those are some exciting ways to get involved. Consider if you know somebody in your life who wants to be a river advocate, or maybe that's you. And then also really invite you to read the stories, but even better, get in touch with me. I love to work with people on building their stories to share with Friends of the River as we head into our next 50 years.
Thanks, Toby. So let me ask you, you've taken a lot of people down the river over the course of your work and your recreation, I know. Could you tell us about one of your favorite river trips or most memorable over the course of your river time?
I'll stay on the fun side of memorable. We all know that river trips can go have exciting moments in them. But the exciting moment I want to share with you that is really fun is, for a few years we ran an event called Paddle to the Capitol. And one of the ways Eric tasked me with coming up with something that made it unique and stand out. And so you actually got to see a picture of him being unique and standing out. But this moment that I want to share with you is river ferries were one of the things that I thought, I was like, well, that would be interesting. Wouldn't it be fun to come along and see people who had treats for us, who are wearing weird, fun, colorful costumes? And so I convinced a couple friends to hop in my boat. And my friend was happy to pull on a tutu. Her partner was a little less happy, but he did it because he He loves me. And so anyway, we got a chance, and we were all wearing tutus going down. We were kind of like running ahead of the team, and we got a chance to pass out ice pops, which you might remember from childhood, which is long, like totally sugary, totally includes the color dyes. And we got to pass out popsicles at Gorilla Rock, which is on that stretch as you head towards Salmon Falls. So that's just some of the fun ways that I've been able to add a little bit of silly to this very water policy, which can be very serious and times very stoic. And so it's pretty fun to add tutus and popsicles to things.
Well, I'm going to have to admit, you may not remember, as the chairman of the board, I probably shouldn't admit this, but you got me to wear a tutu once on one of the river trips. Little known secret. Anyway, moving right along.
We'll look for the picture.
We're going to go back to Ron Stork.
Well, I tend to also tell river stories, but my stories tend to run long. So I'm going to try and keep this one short. And it's really a kind of a reflection on the intersection between our Wild and Scenic River campaign work, our dam fighting work, our staying power, and the future. That is what we have in front of us still to accomplish, just on one issue. And it's framed by the work that we're doing with the Storage Response Group, which really arose when California voted to put up almost $3 billion of money for deadbeat dams. And the federal government also began a program as well in 2016 to do those kinds of things. And that really put us on the back foot. But when it comes to staying power, the cool thing is that, we've been doing Wild and Scenic work for a long time. And I've been doing Wild and Scenic River work for a long time. And we managed to protect the McCloud River back in 1989, which is now some time ago. And one of the storied rivers in California is the McCloud. And surely, with it being protected in this by the State Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, no harm would come to it. And my that was what I thought, because I'm naive and that's the way things roll. But the Bureau of Reclamation thought otherwise, and has been working for all these years on trying to expand Shasta Reservoir, raise Shasta Dam, and drown part of the free-flowing McCloud. And last year, things really finally came to a head on that effort when the Westlands Water District, the largest water district in California, said, we're going to help out the Trump administration to get this dam. And so we schlep up to Reading, and at the scoping session that Westlands held, Friends of the River and its attorney, and we explained this project's illegal. We shouldn't be here. And they said, thank you very much, and kind of dismissed us. Though I did get to do a TV interview that night and explain to the TV audience in Reading what was going on. And I think we were both heartened by the large number of very sympathetic people who turned out to that meeting. And needless to say, one thing led to another. And really what happened is that we and the California Attorney General sued the Westlands Water District and won at least a temporary victory. And they had to stand down and stop their EIR last summer. And they still haven't resumed that environmental impact report. Almost 11 months worth of time that they've lost in potentially the remaining part of the Trump administration. That said, Reclamation has managed to get money from the Congress to continue their pre-construction engineering and design work. The president came out to Bakersfield and announced to adoring crowds that he would be bringing them a lot of water and a lot of dam. And Secretary of the Interior Bernhardt announced that there were big things in store at Shasta Dam, and just wait and see what Interior is up to. Well, that gets, the fact that it's illegal under state law and federal law is the current circumstance that we find ourselves in. But 2 weeks ago, President Trump signed an executive order that basically told the federal agencies, we're in an emergency. I'm invoking all the emergency powers of all the authorities that you act under, the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, and your organic acts. And if you're empowered to undertake emergency actions, we're in an emergency, and I want you to go build dams and canals and other infrastructure. So, we've had 30 years of protection for the McCloud River. We've successfully staved off both Reclamation and or the Department of Interior and the Westlands Water District so far, but we're still in for a fracas, and that makes you feel like you're needed. And the fact that there are friends of the river and friends of the McCloud River especially is something that's going to be needed as we go forward in the future, because rivers that don't have friends are soon on the endangered list. But this is one that we can win, and we should win. And all it takes is staying power and good lawyers and friends in the legislature and the Congress, and we'll pull this one off. So that's a vignette of what we do at Friends of the River, just on one campaign that granted, it's been going on for 30 years, but there are climaxes and then there are brief respites, and then we go back into the fight again. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. I will say that some of the most satisfying work that I get done is more collaborative work, less fighting work, where you get to solve problems for people who genuinely then are willing to set down their swords and not and basically abandon their plans to wreck rivers. And that sometimes happens in a career, and we cherish that when we get a chance to do that.
Thank you, Ron, very much for that. And thank you for your almost 33 years of amazing work on behalf of Friends of the River. So you've been involved in protecting so many rivers over the years. If you could go spend a week either running or camping next to one of those rivers that you've been involved in, which one would it be?
Well, of course, it depends on the time of year. So that means that I've got a whole palette of rivers that that I would enjoy being able to do. But in the high summer, the glories of the High Sierra are really where you want to be, and maybe it'd just be ambling around the Kern Plateau for a couple of weeks in that beautiful polished granite and fantastic stars and and a river running through it, and alpine plants and alpine wildflowers and little nooks and crannies.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. Hope you can get to do it. Next, we're going to go back to Colton.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name's Colton. I am Friends of the River's On River Program Coordinator. Normally, during this time of year, I'd be out on the river taking some of you downstream, or out on the Lower American here taking people canoeing, or being out there with you and helping coordinate those programs. Obviously, in the state of COVID, we're all inside right now. And just like the rest of the world has adapted, so too is Friends of the River. So even though we don't have active programs going on right now, we are hard at work thinking about how we can come back even stronger with those programs. But we're doing even more than that. You may have noticed that during the start of COVID, our social media use has increased. And we've basically taken this time during the shelter-in-place orders I have taken this time to educate myself and learn how Friends of the River can better utilize social media. The world is evolving, and Friends of the River is evolving with it. So we are learning that we need to be more engaged with social media. And so I'm attending webinars and reading lots of articles and writing up general social media guidelines and plans for us, so that going forward we can have a stronger presence on social media and a stronger engagement. Because it's not just enough to be present on social media, but we want to be engaging the online audience just like we are engaging in-person audience. Like we take people down rivers, we can engage with people on the internet as well. And we can also meet new friends there too. So not everyone in the state has the means to be able to come up to a Point Positive Day up here in Sacramento or get on the river with us. But most people have the ability or interest and can find us on social media should we be using them correctly. So I'm taking this time to educate myself and learn how we can better use social media to increase our development. So working with Brittany to make sure that our volunteer or our development opportunities are there. Working with Toby to make sure that we have volunteer opportunities that are available online, or that you can see events like this is a great example of something that we are doing to keep people involved and engaged. And then just generally attending and learning as much as I can about the new world of social media, and how best we can wrap ourselves into it. You may have noticed a reoccurring social media post on our platforms called Riverside. And those posts center largely around photos that folks like you have shared. So people have shared photos of rivers that mean a lot to them, or waterways, or just special areas where they find a moment of zen. And we've been using our platform to share those in an effort to help keep everyone calm and centered, and remembering that rivers are still out there, and once shelter in place ends and lifts, we can all go back to them. And so in that, we want our social media use to be interactive. So we're looking for people to share videos with us, share photos with us, engage with us on social media to make sure that we are being lively on social media. So if you have photos or videos and you think they'd be a great fit for the River Zen, you can send them to Kelly. And you can find our Facebook link and Instagram link for our social media down in the chat. And you should be able to find Kelly's email down there as well. And Kelly is the one who will handle the incoming photos and videos that you send to her. And we'll make sure that those get sent and put on social media.
Thank you. You've been doing all this work soliciting other people's moments of Zen. Do you have a favorite personal moment of Zen that you have had over your course of time at FOR?
Yeah, I think for me, it was probably before I even started working at FOR, but when I started the RATS program, I took a moment and went down to the the banks of the American there at Camp Lotus and watch the sunset. And it is just a really calm moment. And I often reflect on that and how much it meant to me as an individual developing, but also my relationships with and around rivers. It was really powerful for me. And so living so close, I get to relive that that sunset almost all the time now, being right here next to the American River. So, yeah.
Nice. Sounds like a nice moment of Zen. Thanks. Now we're going to go back to Eric.
Sure. Hi. Well, I want to take this opportunity to talk about our Point Positive program. Point Positive, many of you are probably familiar with it as a rafting term. We're also using it in terms of pointing positive to where we want to go in terms of river management, river protection, and water policy in the state of California. It's really about revolutionizing water to reduce water demand so that we can restore rivers, having solutions, right? So having an offense on top of a defense. We're always going to need to be there to protect and defend rivers, the laws that protect them. We also need to have a good, strong offense, be finding that through line, as Mark talks about, to a sustainable, climate resilient water future. So about a year ago, we really ramped up our program and our effort in this area. And one of a catalyst for that was when Governor Newsom, issued an executive order in 2019 calling for the state to develop a water resilience portfolio, a plan for California water looking out to 2050 and even 2100, right? What are we going to do? Better gear up. So we decided to jump in with both feet on this and really get engaged, providing our input into the public process. But I think the lion's share of our work really went into organizing the many stakeholders that we work with to kind of develop community-wide comments and recommendations for what we think needs to go into this vision for California's water future. So we reached out to dozens of non-governmental organizations like fishing organizations, environmental groups, Native American tribes. We also talked to and reached out to more than 250 businesses. So we reached out to the private sector, to sustainable water businesses that are out there, some startups, some more established, to get their input on what the state can do to help them scale up and advance sustainable alternative water solutions. That took a fair bit of work, right? So we don't work with that business community. We don't have a track record of working with that community over the years. So we had to find out who are these businesses and how do we get a hold of them. So we dove in and did a ton of research. We found a bunch of incubators for startups, and we could go and who have they incubated over the years, and then go to their web pages. Some of them don't have web pages because they haven't launched yet. So developing this whole database, which we now have, to reach out to the private sector. And then we did a similar, but it was easier to reach them, but our allies in the environmental movement, but hosting a number of meetings with them to pull together our comments and recommendations. And it really all culminated in two big meetings, one in May, one later in August, where we brought a lot of these stakeholders together in the room to really hammer out some of the specifics that get down to the specific wording of what we want the state to do to point positive. And we had some great participants, including like the Secretary of Natural Resources for the state of California and the Secretary of the California Environmental Protection Agency. But the most important part were the stakeholders actually giving us their expertise and input on what they wanted to see happen. And that all culminated in us delivering recommendations to the state. And we had a lot in there, but we tried to focus on some key areas. We certainly talked about irrigation efficiency, carbon farming, or healthy soils to reduce water use or water intensive farming, recommending funding for pilots and demonstration of new and emerging technologies so they can get proven and scaled up, water recycling. The state ought to develop a plan for strategic retirement of marginal or unsafe land that's currently being farmed in agriculture. So these, that gives you a feel, hopefully, for some of the recommendations that we put in there. And the current status of this portfolio is they released a draft early in January, but they haven't finished it yet. And I guess they get some of sense of a pass for COVID that is pretty intensive for folks, for all of us. But they really need to finish the plan and get it out the door so they can move to implementation. And the other thing is, it's not really a paradigm shift. I wouldn't call it they didn't revolutionize California water. It's kind of a kitchen sink approach. It's a lot of things in there, kind of saying like, let's just do more and better of the same, as opposed to kind of looking at some fundamental changes like land retirement in strategic areas, or reviewing water rights, for instance, or some of the bigger fundamental issues plaguing California water, which then in turn plagues our rivers. On the good side, it mentions, we're not going to build new dams on rivers in the state of California. That's a good thing. I think it shows how far we really, doesn't sound like much but for the state to say that, I think it really shows how far FOR has come, and how far, the river protection movement has come over the last 50 years to get to that point. And they've got, lots of things in there for urban water efficiency, ecosystem restoration is an emphasis for sure, and beefing up existing programs in the state for ag irrigation efficiency and healthy soil. So that's good. But it's really going to be our job now moving forward to push the envelope, to get them to go further, and where they're not, then find other avenues where we can push the envelope further. And that's our job as advocates, to make sure that we move forward on the good stuff, and don't move forward on the not so good stuff. Where are we now beyond that? Is we're doing all of this in the context of COVID and an economic crisis, right? So all of Friends of the River's work continues. We're certainly not looking for work. There's more than enough ongoing activity from what we were doing before this pandemic. But one thing that's kind of different now, on top of the technology and all the stuff that Kelly talked about, is the economic crisis. It's kind of a double-edged, it creates an opportunity, right? So if you think about the clean energy movement, we've come a long way on clean energy, and it's good for the environment, but it's also been proven that it's good for the economy. It creates jobs, right? So why can't we do the same thing for water? And so what we're looking at doing, and we've started to reach out to, or I've been working with a collection of organizations, community-based organizations, watershed organizations, forward-leaning urban water agencies, and sustainable water businesses, to start looking at the water resilience portfolio, or adjacent to that, at what are attaching job creation or economic stimulus quantification to that, right? So this is not only what it could do for water resilience, but it could also help with economic resilience at the same time. So that's a little bit of adaptation to our current circumstances that certainly we'd want to be making those arguments anyway, but this is a ripe time to do that, I think, for sure. So that's a little bit about what's happening with Point Positive.
Thank you, Eric. I've been working with you for a long time, very closely, and I know how important the work is and how demanding your job is. What do you do to relieve the stress of this job you have? What's your favorite thing to do to get away from it?
Well, we got a hammock in the backyard. That's a pandemic purchase. That comes in handy. Okay, look, so I'll answer a different question first that relates. Maybe. What I really like about my job, about being an executive director, is that you get to build something. And I get to build something that is something I care deeply about, right? So I like building. That carries into my personal life too. When I was in college, I worked construction jobs. And so at home, believe it or not, to relax, I actually, I enjoy not just puttering around the house, but taking on major remodel projects and getting my hands dirty. I've had to mute more than one conference call while the Sawzall was in operation, or skill saws going, or something like that. I'm doing a little bit of multitasking now and then, but I just like building, and in a way that just kind of makes our life happy. But it's like exercising kind of, for stress reduction, like going out and hard charging a hill on your bike, right? So it's a little bit of the same release.
Okay, it keeps you going. Never ready bunny. All right, now back to Brittany.
Well, thanks, Bob. So my job as development director is to build support for the work that we do to protect rivers. And one of the ways we do that is to bring people together and build community through events. And when the pandemic forced the cancellation of many of our events and programs, we kind of had to start looking for new ways to connect with our supporters. And one of the ways to do that was to reach out to them directly. So we started calling people by phone and emailing them just to see how they were doing in these challenging times, and to also get to know them a little better and learn how they got involved with Friends of the River. You may have received a phone call from one of us or an email from a volunteer or board member or staff member. And as things became a little bit clearer in April, we began to realize that in-person events probably aren't going to be as viable for the rest of the year. So we embarked on a virtual event series, now our Riverside Chats. And the idea is to stay connected to the river community by offering a virtual experience where we can focus on topics of interest to our supporters even while we can't be together. So the first event was our virtual Rafting with the Legends. So we got together some of the legends of the rafting world in California, along with our longtime friend and former executive director and one of the founders, Mark Dubois. And I had a really great time planning this because in the process of getting everyone together, I really got that feeling of community that I had been missing, and I think that a lot of us had been missing. But it also felt a bit like I was directing a TV cable news show interview because I had to meet with each panelist and test their sound and make sure their lighting was good. And, you know, I was asking people that I had only just met to move their lighting around and adjust it so there was no shadows on their face, and even remove some awkward distractions in the background. And, you know, we wanted it to look professional, but not too professional because we were going for that Riverside chat kind of feeling. We wanted people to feel like they were sitting around a campfire. And so to help set the mood, Mark actually lit a candle behind him for ambiance, which added a nice touch to it. The event was great. You can watch it on our website now, and we certainly hope to continue and build on that sense of community in the sessions to come. The next Riverside Chat will focus on women on water, and it'll be hosted by Melissa DeMarie from the California Women's Sports Collective, and that'll be on July 22nd at 7 p.m. So we hope you can join us for that. We're also going to have one of these events planned each month throughout the summer leading up to our virtual California River Awards in October. So as you know, the California River Awards is our annual gala, and it's traditionally held in a ballroom in San Francisco, but now in its virtual state, I hope that means that more people can join us virtually. And it's a great way for people to come together and support our work, but now you can do it without even leaving your house. So we'll have entertainment, silent auction, and as part of the Riverside Chat series, you'll actually have an opportunity to become a sponsor and help provide much needed support for our ongoing work in protecting rivers through climate resilient water solutions and our point positive work, as Eric described. You can learn more on our website on the Riverside Chats page, and Kelly should be posting that link in the chat box for you there. So, thanks.
Thank you, Brittany. I covered a lot of ground. What's your favorite thing about working for FOR?
I think my favorite thing about FOR really is the events. As a statewide organization, you know, people are kind of scattered all over the place. So the events really bring people together, like physically. And it's really a great way to get people like geared up and excited. And I really love that sort of excitement. It kind of makes my job a lot more fun. And I also get to partake in, you know, some of our other river programs throughout the summer as well. And so just being part of that and having that sense of community it's a lot of fun. And I really look forward to when we get to do that again. I certainly miss it right now.
Nice. Thank you. And thank all of you for such great descriptions of the work you do. Now we're going to go to the question and answer session. We do have a couple of questions that are good questions coming in. First one is addressed to Ron Stork. How did you get your start in river advocacy?
Well, I was a plant science major from UC Davis, and I moved to Merced. And of course, you're imbued with the ethic that it's important to make the deserts bloom, to make rivers fully diverted, and leave nothing left, and put it all in the fields. But um, life evolves a little bit, and you you start to enjoy the natural world. And there was some beautiful spring hikes on the Merced River and the South Fork of the Merced that I fell in love with. And then there were people trying to put dams on them, and I just broke the other way, and found my true life.
Indeed, a life that's been well spent. Okay, next question. I think I'm going to throw this to Eric. With much of the state focused on COVID and racism throughout much of our culture, as well as the challenging economy, how do we continue the conversations about the environment and specifically rivers?
Yeah. Yep. It's like you're inside my head. That the person who asked that question. Not just my head, but the board and staff have been thinking about this for sure. I mean, one thing I would note is that these things are always cyclical. There's the hot issue of the moment of the day, and these issues don't necessarily go away over time. Certainly racism isn't like that, but the public attention can shift or focus over time. So you kind of gotta go with the flow to some degree, but you also need to ride the wave, right? So what are the opportunities here? So it makes us think about our own organization, like internally. What are we doing to encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion? How are we going to go about that? So we're doing a training for staff and board members and lead volunteers soon. And you can also look at programs. Martha Davis, who is the executive director, well, Brittany, you mentioned her. She's got a great saying or phrase that says, make their problem your problem. Or another way to put it is, let me make your problem my problem. This is important because not everyone, otherwise we're just preaching, right? Trying to convince people to agree with us. So if you can find a nexus between their problem and our problem, then you've got some opportunities. And even if there's not a nexus, there can be indirect benefits for sure that have huge payoffs down the road. I mean, one example is the jobs that I talked about, right? So if we're looking at an economic crisis, great, let's talk about aqua jobs. Not just green jobs, but aqua jobs. Let's really get serious about doing some analysis and then the PR communications and advocacy around it. Yeah, we can actually create jobs in this economy by just like Martha Davis did in LA when she was at the Mona Lake Committee, working with the mothers of East LA. Getting them jobs replacing toilets, doing toilet retrofits. Well, there's all kinds of, there's smart meters that need to be installed. That's job creation opportunity. There are, just a whole host of leak detection and repair for pipes. Leaky pipes are a huge water loss source for urban water users and ag. So there's all kinds of job creation opportunities. Let's get real about it. The other one I might mention that we're not doing anything on now, but if you enjoy rivers, especially as they flow, say, out of the foothills into the floodplain or into a valley floor, and they go through an urban area, you might notice that there's a homelessness problem. That relates to our economic crisis, and that creates water quality problems and recreational issues for people that like to hang out at those rivers and swim in them without getting sick. So there is a nexus there, and there's a need so environmental groups, river groups could actually be working on hunger and homelessness because that's a way to improve and protect and the health of rivers, particularly heavily used rivers in urban areas that matter a lot to a lot of people. So we're not doing that currently, but it's an example.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I think I'm going to toss this to Brittany. How can we use this current online and social media focused time to better include Southern California in FOR's efforts?
Well, we are going to have some some different topics coming up for our Riverside chat events. We're trying to be a little bit more, inclusive as, on water as a whole and not just focus on, like statewide and not just focus, in the Sacramento area. But so the next one is going to be Women on Water. And so we'll have some different women speaking on, their advocacy work and different work that they're doing. I don't have the full list of panelists just yet, but some of the other topics are going to be, river advocates through generations, like generations of families who are working on this stuff. And then the last one, I believe, is going to be the 21st century water entrepreneurs. And so we'll really get to learn more about the sustainable technology that Eric mentioned in the Point Positive world. And so I think some of those topics are pretty broad. And so I think that will open up the conversation a little bit, and hopefully we'll get some more interest from people all over the state, not just, here in Sacramento.
Colton, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, one thing we've been doing with social media is analyzing analytics, or the metrics, and using analytics to see what we are posting and how our audience is engaging with it. So we can do that too with regions like Southern California. We can see how many people from Southern California are engaging with our posts and what posts they are engaging with. And then we can tailor content to that, and we can regionally tailor and post things that are more appealing to people in Southern California to help bring in that audience. Another thing that Eric talked about was the make their problem your problem. Often in Northern California, we see this is where all the dams are usually proposed. And in Southern California, that's not quite the same problem that they're facing. So the Southern California problems are different than Northern California problems. So tailoring what we do and post and say on the social media world to also fit Southern California is a way that we can help bring in Southern California in Friends of the River's efforts.
Bob, just let me observe that there's been a fair amount of work over the years, even relatively recently, on wild and scenic rivers in Southern California, and that continues.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, since I'm involved in a lot of the events over the years, that I'm hoping that the expertise that we gain in this era of doing things virtually can be an overlay on top of when we get back to doing things live. So our typical fall event, California River Awards, we attract about 180 people, but they got to get to San Francisco and they got to deal with traffic and places to stay. But if we can continue to do that, but enable another 100, 200, 300 people to attend virtually from all over the state, it's be a great add-on to get our message out, to enable people to attend without traveling long distances, because California is a big state. Anyway, we're getting a little behind schedule. We got one more question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to throw it back and end with Ron Stork in this question. Somebody has asked, are there viable large-scale water recycling projects that are being practiced in California or elsewhere? Or you or Eric can decide who to take that. But
Sure. They tend to be in areas that are coastal, because that water is pretty expensive water. Typically, it's worth recycling, and it also gets tossed to the ocean. It's not somebody else's supply. So recycling becomes a way to hang on to your supply, where in other parts of the state, water that you don't recycle ends up being somebody else's supply. And I think actually down in Martha Davis land is one of the more noteworthy areas of major focus, and and Brittany has already explained to you how inspiring Martha can be, and how she can tell you a story about what they've done in her water district that gathers water down around in the Chino area, where incidentally I grew up. I'm a native Southern Californian and a Dodger fan.
We'll forgive you for that. Okay, if you have more questions, you can post them, and if you want to stay on at the end, we can try to answer more questions. Now we're going to go back to Eric Wesselman and have him, he promises, in 5 minutes or less, give you a little bit of the vision of FOR going forward. We are approaching our 50th anniversary of FOR in a couple of years, and there's a huge amount of work going on right now behind the scenes with Eric and the board of directors on strategic planning, figuring out who we are going forward. Eric?
Sure. Yeah, I might truncate this a little bit just to be respectful of everyone's time. But be assured you'll be hearing more about this in the months and years to come. As you know, many of you probably know, or all of you know, we were founded in 1973. So we are approaching our 50th anniversary, folks, believe it or not. And how far we've come, right? Lots of accomplishments and lots of progress. And perhaps most notably is really one we don't talk about that much, but it's that kind of value shift from like, we build dams. This is how we do things in California and in the country. This is how we do water. Well, we're doing water differently. Maybe not as differently as we would like, but the shift has happened. No new dams on rivers in California. That's what the state is saying, right? So, so we'll see. But we're going to hold them to that. But where do we want to go over the next 50 years? That's really the question that we're turning to now. And then I mentioned in my introduction, we've really turned the corner and we're ready to grow. And we were planning for expanding the organization this winter. And then COVID happened. And then we started saying internally, with the board in particular, well, what do we do? We did the financial analysis, and we're keeping a very close eye on the books and the budget and income projections. But do we hunker down and try to weather the storm? And the board made a decision, and we're not going to hunker down. We're going to throttle up. We're gearing up and using this time to make sure that we're positioned where we want to be on the other side of this crisis. So why? I mean, there's a number of reasons, but a big one is there's just too much at stake, right? Like, we've got the Trump administration now. There could be another term. Bigger than that is climate change. All of the water issues we've been dealing with and facing, and the challenges over the last 50 years, we're going to still have for the next 50 years. But on top of that is a big, fat, thick layer of climate change. That's going to change everything. More severe drought, more severe flooding, infrastructure issues. The list goes on and on. So we need to go. We need to go big. We need a bigger boat. So we've started doing some planning on what this is going to look like. And I'm just going to run through and highlight 3 main program areas that we're discussing and working to flesh out with one kind of overarching one. The first one is river defense. Yeah, we're going to keep protecting rivers. We're going to hold the line, right? That means we're going to fight new dams and diversions that are destructive to rivers and expensive. We're going to work to defend our environmental protections, the laws that underpin protection of aquatic habitat in rivers from the Trump administration or whoever. We're going to continue to work to protect rivers by getting them into the wild and scenic river system. The second area I want to emphasize is the point positive work. So revolutionizing water in California by advancing climate resilient water solutions. We can be part of the solution. We can drive the solution to reduce water demand so we don't need more dams or take the pressure off of rivers and surface water supplies. And we can't afford just to be reactive and defensive, right? We've got to be proactive and go on the offense. We don't want to be offensive though. But then we need to make sure that if we're reducing demand, we need to make sure that we keep water that we save in rivers, right? So that's going to be the key nut, one of the key nuts that we have to crack in that campaign. And there are a number of levers that we have, but we need to use them more forcefully, pull on them harder. So the third area I want to mention is boring name, but that can change. But it's constituency building, right? It goes back to that. We're going to need a bigger boat. We need more people in this movement. So to do that, I think we need to be more relevant to people's lives. We need to find ways to tap into that and that personal connection. We need to organize. That starts with organizing people where they're at. And you know, if folks love boating or love rivers already, great. Like that's a great target audience. But there are millions of other people across the state that don't have that connection to rivers. So we can help create that connection by either getting them out to the river or bringing the river to them, since it's hard to get thousands or millions of people out to a river in the course of, you know, in a short period of time, right? So, so we can bring the river to them through education, information programs that are entertaining and interesting and motivating and inspiring. And then the third area of that part of that is making their problem our problem, right? Finding ways to be more relevant to people's lives by working on issues that have a nexus with river protection, as I was mentioning earlier. All right, so the fourth and final area that's kind of for all of the above is communications. You know, as Colton was saying, like we could be doing so much more to get the message out, to reach people, and so we're already starting with that, with investment in online communications, and we'll be adding to that social media investments and outreach. So we are really leveraging the power of that, and we've learned a lot just through this COVID crisis. That's great. As Bob, you were saying, let's leverage that into the future as well. So communication is going to be fundamental, and that's not just reaching out to people, but all through directly, but also through our print materials, but and then finally through you know, events and activities and volunteer activities. So that's some of what we're gearing up for the next 50 years. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Eric, and thank all of you, and thank all of you in the audience who are out there that we can't see and smile at you, but I hope you found this Riverside chat informative, entertaining, and that you're leaving with a much better appreciation of the work done by all these people. It's very, very difficult and important work that never stops. It's just, there's no breaks. In fact, in this age of the man we don't want to mention, it's just become more difficult than ever. There's a few things I just want to double back on to remind everybody. Please think about submitting something to the Storytelling Project. This is just a wonderful thing. And if you've got some connection, as you probably do if you're on this call, to the FOR family, you've probably got a story to tell. So please consider sending that in. Please consider staying connected with us and getting connected in every possible way. Facebook, Instagram, our website, our online and our hard mail newsletters, and if we ask you to step up and call your legislator about something, please do so, because it really does make a difference. I remind everybody, this is a bit trite, but vote, and vote for candidates that care about the environment. Put on your calendars the next one, July 22nd, Women on the Water. And then last but hardly least, please consider donating. As you may have seen if you've been on our website or when you signed up to register for this event, what we're doing to take the place of sponsorships for our 2 live events, the one in the spring, called the Capital River Awards that we've had every year for 10 years, and our big one in the fall. Those can't be held in this period of time we're in. So this is how we're trying to stay connected, how we're trying to bring in sponsorship dollars so that we can afford to do what we do. So please consider becoming a sponsor of the Riverside Chat series. You can do that by going online and signing up. Very easy to do. In fact, Brittany may be also posting you a link right now. But we cannot do what we do without your support. It's we don't get money from the government. Well, that's not true. We got some under the relief program, but that's not a regular event. That's a very one-time aberration. So we rely on our supporters, people like you, day in and day out. So please think about supporting us. And on behalf of the entire staff, thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Oh, hold on. More questions. Anybody wants to can stay on. I've got one more question that came up. Question for Ron regarding the McCloud River. The person who asked it is still on. would the latest proposed action by the water agency impact the Hart, I think they mean the Hearst family Wintun retreat, and or if the Hearst family has indicated interest or concern?
They have not. Of course, the Hearst family sold some of their property there, so they have less interest than they used to. This has been mostly an effort. Well, it's been led by Friends of the River, but we've had some important colleagues who've helped in the campaign, and a lot of hard work by our attorneys, your justice, and we've had some vocal cheerleading from American Whitewater and California Trout, which also have a lot of members who really deeply care about the McLeod.
Okay. Thank you all, and good night.
Righto.
Thanks, everybody. Take care out there.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.